workers in over 100 cities put down their spatulas and picked up picket signs today in a nationwide protest for better wages. The goal of the protest is to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, which would amount to $31,200 for a full-time employee before taxes.
What began 1 year ago here in New York City with just 200 employees has exploded into arguably the biggest wave of protest in the history of America's fast food industry. Thousands of fast food workers in more than 100 cities throughout the country have walked off the job Thursday, demanding a raise in minimum wage and the right to unionize without retaliation.
Now, you know that there are airport workers and fast food workers and nurse assistants and retail salespeople who work their tails off and are still living at or barely above poverty. And that's why it's well past the time to raise a minimum wage that in real terms right now is below where it was when Harry Truman was in office.
While the fast food industry remains a $200 billion industry, the median wage for the service workers like the cooks, the cashiers, the crew, the national median wage is just $8.94 an hour.
Democrats are getting ready for a major push to raise the federal minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. Now that's better than nothing, but it is not enough. The minimum wage should be raised to $15 incrementally over the next 3 years.
I saw various people talking about raising the minimum wage for fast food workers, but for everybody, raising a federal minimum wage to $15. The arguments they make are that based on inflation, it should be higher for a living wage. And, you know, these greedy companies are not paying their employees enough. And Robert Reich, who basically got his economic training when he was leading the Lollipop Guild, says that it should be $21 an hour based on productivity.
The typical worker today is also more than twice as productive as them. Adjusted for both inflation and productivity gains, therefore, the minimum wage should be at least $15 an hour.
If the minimum wage was chained to worker productivity, it would be, at a minimum, $18.30 an hour. So whenever you hear conservatives or capitalists make the argument that, you get what you deserve, this country's a meritocracy, the harder you work, the further you go, your response to that should be, that's fantastic, so I can sign you up to be in favor of an $18.30 minimum wage?
So I'll explain the productivity thing real quick, and then we'll take this all apart. When Robert Reich says $21 based on productivity, that would be the same as saying you have a restaurant and you have 300 dishes that need to be cleaned an hour. So you pay a guy an hour to clean the dishes. Then you spend the money and invest in a dishwashing machine. The same guy can wash the dishes at 5 times the speed. You don't give him a 500% increase in his pay. He's paid based on the fact that if he doesn't want to do the job, plenty of other people will take the job. So the argument that productivity means anything is really irrelevant.
Had the minimum wage of 1968 been adjusted for inflation, it would be well above $10 an hour today.
We currently, today in the U.S., have a federal minimum wage that is below that of 1968 if you adjust for inflation.
If the minimum wage was simply equal to what it was in 1968, it would be over $10 an hour today.
Why did they point out 1968? Well, there's a lot of various reasons why money might have more buying power at the end of 1968 than, say, 1969 or 1967. If you go to 1960, the buying power of the minimum wage would be $7.59. If you go just a few years after 1968, say 1973, it's only $8.10. So they're basically cherry picking the 1 year where the minimum wage hit a spike for any number of reasons. And what they're trying to do is convince you that, 1968's minimum wage was worth $10.34, so now it must be at least 15 or 20 or 21 or 18. It's nonsense. Minimum wage is going up and down, and at some points here you see it going down a little bit, then it kind of sinks a bit, then it comes back up, and then it sinks. It just fluctuates over time. So the whole $10 an hour minimum wage adjusted for inflation back in 1968, they just cherry-picked that number because it was the highest number they could find based on Department of Labor numbers. If you go all the way back to 1938, the establishment of the minimum wage be $3.98 in 2012 dollars. See how that works? So they can cherry-pick all the data they want. We're going to take that apart right now. We're going to look at minimum wages over time and what they've been. And the two sites I'm going to use to do it are the Department of Labor.gov. This is the year and the minimum wage. We're going to then take the minimum wage numbers and put them into the Consumer Price Index inflation calculator. Okay, so this is the Consumer Price Index inflation calculator. And I've gotten it from here at the Bureau of Labor Statistics.gov. So these are government numbers. Let's see how some of these wages stack up over time. So in 1968, the minimum wage was $1.60 an hour. Okay? So let's see what that looks like in 2015 dollars. Okay, $10.79. Not 15. It's better than what it is now, but let's move down the line a little bit. 1974. In 1974, it was $2. Let's see what that looks like. $9.52. Not quite 15, is it? In 1979, it's gone up now to $2.90 an hour. Will that get us to 15, adjusted for inflation? Not quite, $9.38. In 1985, the minimum wage was $3.35 an hour. And, that would be like $7.31 today. So, the minimum wage in 1985 is pretty consistent with what it is now. 1990, $3.80. So, 1990, $3.80. So, maybe this will get us to 15. Oh, $6.82. So apparently, the fast food workers right now are doing better than the fast food workers were doing in 1990. Well, in 1991, it went up to $4.25 an hour. That's a good jump, right? Let's see how close that gets us to 15 an hour. $7.32. Ouch. All right, well, let's go to 1997. In 1997, it went to $5.15 an hour. So, according to the Consumer Price Index at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 5/15, 1997. I'm sure this will be 15 by now. $7.53. Well, in 2007, it went to $5.85. Let's see what that looks like. 2007, $5.85. $6.62. Sorry, guys. We're not getting anywhere near the $15. In 2009, it was raised to $7.25. And that is where it remains today. So, let's see what $7.25 looks like in 2009, adjusted for inflation. $7.93.